and I'm very honored to be up here today and having the opportunity to introduce you. Premier McNeil, you come from a family of fearlessness. Your mother was the first female sheriff in Canada and has been a huge influence on you. You've owned and maintained a small business in the Valley for 18 years, and most courageous of all, you've entered public service in 2003, elected as Premier in 2013. So before I welcome you to the stage, I know Premier McNeil wants to share some of the momentum and stories that he's particularly passionate about.
We have to believe in ourselves, and I think we've demonstrated that at Just Us. I mean, out of nowhere, we've managed to create a $7 million company, employing 75 people, and it's because we're rooted in the community.
We're pushing about 50 people or so now to try to get the message out that good work is happening here. You can live in Bedford and do work for Nickelodeon, for MTV, for IBM.
Today is a Winter by the Sea event. Providing these kind of opportunities for newcomers is very important. Make them stay active and then feel welcomed and then foster a sense of belongings in the new community and new country.
We are now listed nationally with both the major players, Sobeys and Loblaws, and sell our product across the country. And just within the last 12 months, we've sent some small shipments into the EU as well.
We have approximately 230 apprentices on our books. We need our apprentices to stay here so that they can help build us the ships that Canada require.
When we are in the peak of our season, we would employ over 200 people right here in Almadam.
The Early Intervention Review was a great opportunity. Through the coordination of our services, we're better able to manage our caseload flow, been able to address our wait lists.
We invested in some liquid ice technology and some other things that just help us specialize in that particular vegetable, and we're doing roughly equivalent of 50 acres of that product.
We've shipped a number of projects over to Norway. We've shipped down in Tennessee. We just recently shipped the Sacramento Kings facility out in California.
We have our head office in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. We have operating facilities in Cornwallis, Yarmouth, and Charlesville. We're able to create these value-added products that are exported all over the planet.
We celebrate a lot of holidays. We try to integrate different communities and cultures. Whenever someone new comes, they're all really welcoming, which is just nice to see.
Worldwide, Canada is seen as crisp, clean. It's got a very good reputation. And because of that, people are responding and people are happy to choose our products. So the worldwide demand is more than we can fill.
This year I thought put a bit of a twist to it, so I have some sphero robots and the students program to manipulate to do a certain task or challenge.
Technology, there's no going back. So I feel like children, they have to grow up with reading, writing, arithmetic, and coding.
It's an exciting time to be in the classroom right now.
We've probably quintupled our market share over the last 3 or 4 years. That was a result of the people in this facility.
So we have an abundance of, from produce to our agriculture. It's all world class. We export blueberries, we export sea urchins. We've got great abattoirs here. The produce from the valley is fantastic. The wine scene is great. I think Nova Scotia is a great province and we have great stuff here.
Ellie, thank you very much. Mahaba. Mahaba. Well, I'll tell you a little story. I had an Arabic lesson in my hometown of Bridgetown. Mama Sophia's Pizza. I went in and they were giving me a lesson and I failed. But they did sell me the pizza. But I want to thank you for your introduction. Ellie and I were sitting there talking, and she said, "You have 11 siblings." I said, "No, I have 16." She says, "You have more siblings than I have in my entire family." But thank you very much, and thank you for continuing to make your commitment to Nova Scotia and staying here and making a life for yourself here in our great province. Thank you, Valerie, for your remarks. It cleared everything up for me. A balanced budget, infrastructure spending, and making sure that I deliver all those services that Nova Scotians want. And revenue is dropping, by the way. Let me start off by saying there's not been a single day that I have ever regretted running for public life or running to be the Premier of Nova Scotia. There was a day not too long ago, though, it was a little harder to get out of bed. I'd heard some revenue numbers and a few other things the night before, but one of the local media outlets in the morning broadcasted Newfoundland's deficit. I hit the floor running after that. A little over 2 years ago when I came here, it was right after Ray Ivany had introduced and brought out his report, the Now or Never report, and I'm sure all of you would have heard that Ray has made a decision to retire from Acadia next June. We are indebted to him for his work, not only in the Now or Never, but for the work that he's done in the education system across our province, whether it is at NSCC or at Acadia or broadly across our university sector here in Nova Scotia. And I know all of you join me in wishing Ray and Laurie a great success in whatever the next venture they choose to take on together. Ray, I also said when I came here 2 years ago, and I'll continue to repeat it as long as you give me the privilege to be your Premier, that is the private sector's responsibility to drive economic growth and job creation. It is the government's responsibility to ensure that the public services that we as families rely on each and every day are there: quality public education, health care, and that vulnerable citizens of our province have the supports network and the supports they need to be able to live and thrive and provide an opportunity for their families in this great province. We've stayed committed to that over the last 2 and a bit years of being the government of Nova Scotia. We've continued to focus on public education, having very difficult conversations about the fact that our curriculum had not been updated in 25 years. John Buchanan was the Premier of Nova Scotia the last time we updated our educational curriculum. I'm so pleased with the work that the department has been doing along with classroom teachers across Nova Scotia, with refocusing towards literacy and numeracy. And yes, we will be the only province in Canada to introduce coding across the entire P-12 education system in the world. All of that has been happening to ensure that we reduce the number of outcomes that we're asking from our kids to be delivered in classroom, but focusing on the ones that will matter: literacy and numeracy, giving them the opportunity to move forward and to capitalize on the opportunities that I believe exist in Nova Scotia, and I believe that you would have seen in this video. If you look, whether it was J.P. DeVoe talking about what's happening at Acadia Sea Plants, which I believe they have shown us the recipe for how we build an economy in Nova Scotia, and that's through research and development and building new products and not being afraid to say, yes, we're from Nova Scotia, Canada, but we can do business globally all around the world. And it's an example right here in front of us by investing in their people, but equally as important, making sure they're hiring people that we've invested in early on who have a quality education and an interest and a desire to want to push the envelope a bit. Imagine they've taken seaweed and built 60 or 70 health supplements that they're selling all over the world right here in Nova Scotia. It's a great recipe for success. That's what we're trying to build in the public education system, is a foundation for young people to be able to make sure, yes, they have the foundations, but we're building the curiosity to push the envelope, to say, why not? Why can't we look at this thing differently? Somebody asked me, why are you bringing coding into public education? I'm sure everyone here in the room probably has a different answer for it, but for me, it's about curiosity. It's about having kids look at things differently, finding new ways to solve old problems. And when we start our children thinking that way early on, I believe we win, and we're going to bet on the next generation of Nova Scotians as a government. Through all of the difficult challenges that we've had as a government, and you've heard about them all, some of them recently, we've invested in our kids. We've invested in classrooms. We've invested in students and our children before they get to school, in early intervention. When a healthcare provider has said one of our children has a delay, some issues that are showing up, we've invested to make sure we have early interventionists to completely wipe out that wait list that was in our province for far too long. And yes, we've had some difficult conversations with those who deliver education to our citizens and those who deliver health care to us. But it's just my firm belief that we need to live within our means. And our collective agreements have to reflect our ability to do so. But during that entire period as we're having their conversations, we are not impacting at all the services that are being delivered to Nova Scotians. I've been encouraged by the way healthcare providers want to do a new way to deliver healthcare to our citizens. Looking at the fact more citizens want to stay home. We've invested $44 million in home care. Our citizens want to be able to access health care across our province. They don't want to wait on a wait list in whatever part of Nova Scotia they live in. They want to access that service in our province in a singular healthcare system that reflects the mobility of today and not the way my grandparents received health care. That was the move to making sure that we unified our healthcare system across Nova Scotia. And we are beginning to see the benefits of that in the reduction of wait lists for those receiving specialty services across our province. Those are encouraging signs that we're moving in the right direction. And as Valerie said, we are heading into election season. We're going to pick a new president. They're going to pick a new president of the United States, and then we're going to start here looking for a new premier or re-electing the same one. But we shouldn't lose sight, and we shouldn't fall into the trap of what's happened by all political parties across, and that is now let's lose focus of the end result and let's look for re-election. There's a demand on us in elected office to do that, but there's also a responsibility on all citizens to be part of that. It's easy for interest groups, it's easy for those representing different organizations to realize governments are potentially in a vulnerable position because they're looking for re-election and come looking for more and more and more. If we want to get the same results we have for 2 decades, let's start those habits again. What will be required, though, is us to stay united on a focused going forward. If I were to tell you more young people are now working in Nova Scotia today, retained in Nova Scotia, than any other province last year, 1,300 young people found jobs in Nova Scotia. What a huge increase from the year before. And I know there's going to be people in the audience who say, 1,300. Wow, big deal. Well, you know what? It was negative the year before. If I were to tell you through these public policy positions we're making, we've doubled the nominees in Nova Scotia from 750 to 1,350. And the only reason we stopped at 1,350 is because the national government has a cap on it. And I had someone say to me, yeah, but Premier, you need to do more. I said, yeah, but we're turning the trend. We're moving in the right direction. The glass is half full, not half empty. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue to hold me to account in our government. When we propose changes to pharmacare that impact some citizens in a negative way, unintentionally, you should hold us to account. And when we're wrong, I'll say we're wrong. And that policy wasn't rolled out the way it should have been. It had a negative impact on certain citizens, and I was wrong. And we will rectify it, but we will do so in the roots of what we believe, which was fair to those citizens. But we need to continue to make sure that when we are having successes in Nova Scotia, that we tell our story in a positive way. Newfoundland and Labrador is not the only Atlantic province struggling under debt. Our sister province next door, Canadian provinces outside of Atlantic Canada are struggling as well, whose economy has been built on resources, but who's also, quite frankly, built programs that are unsustainable. While we have challenges that we're facing head on, we also have a pretty bright future, providing each of us takes on our collective responsibilities. Mine is to deliver quality education, health care, and looking after vulnerable citizens, and setting public policy for those of you in this room who are the job creators to invest in your citizens. I have the good fortune to represent you not only in this province, but across our region, across our country, and globally. And how fortunate I am to get to see our province through the eyes of other global citizens. How fortunate I am that in Atlantic Canada we have premiers who recognize that we need to work together to create an environment of economic strength. I'm very proud of the work we've been doing on red tape reduction. Premier Gallant in New Brunswick has been extremely supportive, Premier McLaughlin in PEI, and I'm looking forward to Premier Ball in Newfoundland joining us as we continue to strip down the barriers, the regulatory barriers that we've created inside of our own provinces. I had a chance a few days ago to sit down with our regional ministers, and I've said this to everyone in federal government really as long as I've been elected in the House, but really since I've had the chance to talk to regional ministers. You know, we are kind of we're going globally looking for trade agreements. We got one coming with Europe and the Asia Pacific trade agreement, and yet we got all these barriers internally. We have such a restriction of how we do stuff in Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. Let's try to get a trade agreement with our neighboring provinces before we're going to get another country. And we're at a time where provinces are recognizing, and for us here in the Atlantic region, so many of you are doing business outside of Nova Scotia and in New Brunswick, working with in PEI. We want to make sure that you get an opportunity to continue to do that. We don't want you to move there. We want you to continue working on behalf of our sons and daughters, creating them opportunity in this region instead of putting up barriers to make it difficult for you to grow and operate here. And I think of all the things that have been talked about since the last federal election, I think one of the things that can't be stated enough is the willingness of the national government to have a conversation with us about how do we move our region of Canada forward. You know, through a conversation through immigration, the Minister of Immigration and so many people working in our department, we negotiated with the national government to say we want a welcoming communities opportunity in Nova Scotia. And the federal government has this policy with our refugees that says really they want to urbanize them. And while it may make sense in some places, and it makes sense to a certain extent here, we said we want an opportunity to be able to move them across Nova Scotia. We're one of two in Canada, one of two provinces in Canada that they've given us the permission to send a plane load to Sydney, to be able to build a community there. That would have never happened without the national government being part of that. I also tell you, I get a chance to go beyond the Atlantic region to open up trade opportunities for many citizens. I was in Asia recently, and one of the things that I must tell you that is striking to me is how people view Nova Scotia in the pristine part of the world we are, but the goods and services that we have to give. And you know what? They realize we're more than lobster, though they like lobster, and they've been buying an awful lot of it. We've doubled our seafood exports in 1 year by opening up the Asia market. You know, simply by working with the private sector to open up those marketplaces. Lobster, and for those of you who were looking to buy it at Christmas time off a wharf in rural communities, you were paying $7 or $8 a pound. You're going to have a hard time remembering the last time you would have paid $7 or $8 for a pound of lobster on a wharf in rural Nova Scotia in December. Pretty hard to remember it. And for those of you that are from rural Nova Scotia and experience it, those of us, my wife said to me, it might be great for trade and all that stuff, and you might think it's good, but geez, we're paying $7, $8 a pound for lobster. But you know what it means? Without government spending any money, other than working with industry to go out and opening up a trade link, we were spending an extra $3 a pound of money around every rural community in Nova Scotia. That's the deckhand salaries were increased. People who owned the boats were making more money. And that money was staying locally in that community because we were valuing that resource just like the world looks at it and values it. We need to value what we have and maximize the value of that. There are days when I become somewhat frustrated by, that might surprise you, frustrated by the concept that we don't like the status quo, but I don't want anything to change. It's a little bit like balance the budget but spend more on infrastructure. But I must tell you, change is happening. And change will always happen. It's the question of whether we want to shape it or have it shape us. And that's the simple question. Do we want to be the people doing the shaping, or do we want to be the people who are shaped? And this is not a pretty shape, so it's changing on me drastically. But we all have to understand that in that change, it will impact each of us differently. And sometimes in a positive way, and sometimes directly, not so much. But in order for our collective success, we have to do things differently. The status quo is simply not an option for this province. And you know, after 2.5 years of making some decisions that have been extremely difficult on some citizens, it strikes me, and it is very striking to me, how much people resist and continue to resist the change, even when we begin to see some of the positive results from that change. And we don't have to look very far. I wasn't battling over collective agreements because I like arguing with people. It wasn't because I thought somebody was overpaid. It was because that's all I had. It's all you have. It's all we have as a province. So we were settling those agreements that we believed were fair to labor and fair to you. And that change is positive, quite frankly, for everybody. And we don't have far to look. And we don't have far to look. Newfoundland is a great example of what takes place when you don't accept the change and build around what you have. I said to you when I started this that I feel privileged to be the Premier, and I like it. But I also want to tell you that every decision I make isn't about being reelected. It's about doing what I believe is right for our province. And with that, there has to be some pain for some of us. And I've, quite frankly, feel some of mine. There was some, and I said I wasn't going to talk about this earlier, but why not? I've been struck by the issue of the pharmacare changes. I must tell you, it was rooted in a place of fairness. I'm sure some of you know people who are low-income seniors in retirement who have a choice to make. Do I fill my 4 scripts, or do I feed myself? This is Nova Scotia. How do we address that? And $30 is a lot of money if you're a low-income senior. So we saw that problem, and we wanted to try to address it. We didn't address it appropriately, but we tried to address it. And I was struck by the fact that there was somehow some belief that we were looking for a tax grab. And I'm thinking to myself, we've got a program in Nova Scotia that all citizens pay $100 million into. And on top of the premiums that we have, it's a program that's $166 million going, and we're looking to find a tax grab in it because we're going to adjust it. At a time when we see drug costs escalating, 1,000 people a week are turning 65. Do the math. There's a problem. There's a disconnect. But no one wants that change on sustainability. As I travel this province, there are an awful lot of people who are very supportive. Very supportive. But there are too many Nova Scotians who are silently supportive. And it doesn't have to be of our government. Because as Valerie alluded to earlier, the members of this chamber were very supportive when it came to immigration. But you can't just be supportive in the chamber. You have to be supportive in your place of work, in your home, and across the community. There were people who have been supportive in helping us achieve other objectives as a government, and we appreciate that. But we need to tell that story. This province is moving in the right direction. Young people are staying here. CFIB's national barometer. Nova Scotia businesses are more optimistic than any other businesses in Canada in the last 4 quarters. And for any of you that follow that, that's a rarity. Nova Scotia businesses are more optimistic about hiring people into the future than any part of Canada. That's a rarity. Those are positive directions. While we face lots of challenges, let's also celebrate our successes. Too many of us look at the glass half empty. When the world looks in, they see the glass as half full at this province. And I'm going to tell you, our neighboring provinces look at this province and see this province as half full. When I travel representing you, and I talk to businesses about locating here, working with NSBI and other, those companies look at this province as the right place to do business, and we're beginning to see not only those that are here growing their operations in Nova Scotia, but looking at our place as a place to do business. Why? Because of quality of life, affordability, all of the things that we should celebrate, but we take for granted and just think that's normal everywhere. Well, it's not. It's not. Home ownership is not something normal in Toronto or Vancouver or in Montreal. But you take it for granted, like I do. Businesses across the globe see that as an asset. We're heading in the right direction. We made some substantive changes, some difficult decisions. We're going to continue to make them, whether there's an election coming or not. We're going to continue to do what we believe is right for this province. If the citizens decide we're not the right people to govern it after the next election, we'll find something else to do. but I want to govern. But we need to tell our story. I can't tell it in the way that you can. Ray Ivany laid out 2 years ago the stark place of our future, and I believe we began to change those around. But it was only believable because he wasn't a politician. It was coming from a citizen of our province. As I travel and tell our story, I open up doors for private sector people. That's when I really see what's happening. They are telling our story. It's not the Premier with them. The office of the Premier helps open the door, but it's the citizens of this province who are creating the jobs, who are telling our story, and it's where we're beginning to see the growth. But you need to be part of that as well. You need to help us tell our story. In Goulbro and Bearhead, you realize the United States government has agreed to export gas into Guysborough and Cape Breton? Only place in Canada. But too many citizens in Nova Scotia believe that's just a pipe dream. There's no way there'd be LNG in Nova Scotia. Well, you know what? Every time someone says that, the folks at Goulbro or Bearhead just jump over the hurdle and keep moving down the road and tick off another issue. We need to believe in ourselves. We need to tell our own story. I'm prepared to do my part of telling that story. I'm prepared as the Premier with our colleagues to deliver public service, quality education, healthcare, and yes, we will look after the VG. Making sure vulnerable citizens in this province know that they have a partner in their government. But we together, all help set an environment, but we together have to build an economy of growing jobs in Nova Scotia. I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe in the people that work for you. We believe in you, and we're counting on you to build the economy that this province deserves. We have tried it every other way. We've tried governments handing money out left and building a false economy. Would it be easy? Absolutely. But we're beginning to see the benefits of allowing you to do it. I believe you're beginning to believe that I'm serious about the fact that we're not going to hand out money. We're going to help you. We're going to put in initiatives to help you hire people. We're going to make sure more apprentices are working in Nova Scotia by ratios. We're going to make sure we build on the Graduate Opportunities Program so that we can help with the finances of a new employee you want to hire. But it'll be you who will drive it. We'll help invest in your employees, but you have to drive the job growth. And together, we will continue to lead Atlantic Canada as the place to do business. But I want to tell you that's not good enough. I want every CEO in Toronto and in Montreal and in Vancouver to recognize Nova Scotia as the place to do business. And you know what? The good news is they're getting the message. They're getting the message. Let's not lose stride here. Let's keep going. Let's continue to build on our partnership. Let's continue to work together for the betterment of our province. And let us continue to look at the glass as half full. Thank you so much for letting me be with you today.
Thank you, Premier. On behalf of everyone here today, your plain speak is very welcome. Thank you. And the message that of the change, status quo, that we need to be part of the messaging and the storytelling, I think I will speak for all of us when we say, yes, we're there, we're here with you. We will definitely be part of that and use your leadership to advance this province. We have time for a couple of quick questions before we wrap up today. Do we have any questions from the audience? So I see Floria's bringing one over to me. Are you up for a question or two, Premier?
Sure. You asked me that like I had a choice.
I know, I know. You said we all have to have some pain. I'll have to be yours.
Pain has never looked so good.
Oh, very nice, very nice. How do we welcome all immigrants, including those who don't speak Arabic?
Very good question. I actually think one of the things that's come out of the national government's decision to bring 25,000 refugees into Canada, it has actually caused, I think, provinces to kind of look inward and say, okay, what do we do when we have a large number of citizens arriving to our respective provinces? And the issue of how do we retain them is, I think, the biggest issue for most of us. But I think the refugees has put us on to what I think is a recipe of success. We've always known that where we have a community of interest, for example, the Lebanese community that is here, the Greek community, the Italian community, I should just say everyone who's renting a crane in Halifax, they have a community. So they have a community, and I spent some time in the Lebanese community. One of the things I really love about it is they hug people, but they hug each other at breakfast. So the competitors who are having breakfast together will hug one another at breakfast and then go beat each other up during the day, and then they'll go home and have supper at night. But they'll worship together. But what they've provided is that family atmosphere for them. So what we're finding is that, particularly outside of the urban center, is it is going to become the responsibility of communities, faith-based organizations, all of our, the Lions clubs, the Rotary clubs, just citizens, to become that extended family for our new Nova Scotians and new Canadians. To be there on the day that they're looking for childcare, or to be there when they'll help them find a doctor, to find where English is a second language is, to do all of the things, quite frankly, that our families do for us in a daily living. And we're really beginning to see, because of the large number that the national government talked about, communities are really galvanizing around this concept of being, in many ways, a surrogate family for our newcomers. And as we build a bit of a base of 3 or 4 or 5 families in a respective province, in a respective region of our province, they will then build out from that, and they will become the new the surrogate family for the next wave of new Nova Scotians and new Canadians. This is, to me, this is pretty basic. Mm-hmm. It's what the same things all of us want and get. If you look at what do our families do for us, well, we have to be that family for those who come.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Premier, I know this is a very busy time of year for you, and I would like to thank you for coming out to talk to us today, and we look forward to this every year. I have to say that this gentleman just spoke to us for approximately 35 minutes with no written text. He just spoke from the heart.
And I didn't say anything they told me to say, so they're all looking at me, going to be mad about that. And when you say 35 minutes, I could see my mother in the audience saying, stop.
And I would like to say thank you for that. That was just excellent. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, all of you. We'll be making a contribution to Feed Nova Scotia on your behalf. Nick Jennery is with us today. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon. We'll see you again soon. Excellent. Yeah. It's really interesting to watch you and see how you've grown in your role and confidence and the way you talk.